Story 1. I worked at a veterinary clinic, and a woman brought in her female dog for spaying. She dropped her off and said she would be back later to pick her up. The surgery went fine, and the dog was resting in recovery. A few hours later, a different woman came in and asked to pick up her female dog. The receptionist checked the records and told her the dog was still in recovery, but everything had gone well. This woman flipped out. She started screaming that we had spayed her dog without permission. We were confused until we realized this was a completely different woman with a dog that looked almost identical to the one we had just spayed. Turns out she had dropped off her dog for a bath, not surgery. Our receptionist had assumed it was the same dog when she arrived earlier, and no one double-checked the name. Two nearly identical dogs, same breed, same color, same age, same collar, but different owners and completely different reasons for being there. The original owner was totally fine and understanding. The second woman, she threatened to sue. Eventually, everything got sorted out. We covered the medical bills for her actual dog, and she never came back. Story 2. I worked at a hotel. One day I saw a guest walk into the lobby completely naked, asking if we had seen his imaginary bird. We hadn't. Security was called. Turns out the guy had taken a bunch of crab and wandered through the emergency exit onto the golf course, got lost, ditched his clothes in the lake, and thought he was chasing some kind of talking bird. The best part? He somehow found his way back into the hotel, dripping wet and yelling about how the bird was trying to recruit him for a secret society of sky watchers. We got him some towels, helped him to his room, and called a wellness check. I still wonder what the frick that bird told him. Story 3. I worked at a coffee shop that was part of a big chain. We had a regular who always ordered the same drink, a large mocha with extra whip and caramel drizzle. Every day, same time, same drink. One day, he comes in, orders like usual, pays, and waits. We call out the drink. He walks over, grabs it, takes one sip, and throws it at the barista. Like full-on throws it. Hits her in the chest. Hot mocha and whipped cream everywhere. He starts screaming, "You know I don't like caramel." We're all standing there, confused. The manager calmly says, "Sir, you've ordered it with caramel every day for the last year." He freezes, looks around, and quietly says, "Oh," then walks out without another word. Never saw him again. Story 4. I worked at a grocery store in a really small town. One day this guy came in with a duck. Not a duck in a cage or on a leash, just holding a live duck under his arm like a football. He was talking to it the whole time, asking it what kind of cereal it wanted. Then he started holding up boxes to its beak and saying, "Peck once for yes, twice for no." The duck didn't peck anything. He got mad and yelled, "Why do you never decide anything?" Then he walked out without buying anything, still holding the duck, still arguing with it. Story 5. I worked in IT for a law firm. One day I got a ticket saying one of the partners' computers wouldn't turn on. I get to his office and see the monitor is black, the keyboard's unplugged, and the power strip is turned off. I reach down, flip the power switch, plug in the keyboard, and boom! Everything comes to life. He says, "You're a genius." I was going to call Dell and yell at them. I said it was just the power strip. He goes, "Well, that's why we have you." Then he offered me a cigar in the middle of the workday. I declined. Story 6. I used to work at a movie theater. One night during a sold-out showing, a woman walks out of the theater halfway through the movie, storms up to the front desk, and says, "You need to pause the movie. My husband has to use the bathroom." We told her that's not how theaters work. She said, "He's going to miss part of the plot." We offered her a free ticket to come back and see it again. She said, "No, I want everyone else to wait." She marched back into the theater, shouted, "They said no!" and then left the building in a rage. Her husband followed sheepishly like 10 seconds later, looking like he wished he were invisible. Story 7. I worked at a pizza place. A guy came in and ordered a medium pepperoni pizza. 20 minutes later, he picks it up and leaves. 5 minutes after that, he storms back in, slams the pizza box on the counter, and screams, "This pizza has no pineapple." I told him he didn't order pineapple. He says, "I always order pineapple. You should know that." I told him we can't guess topping. That's why we ask. He says, "This is crab. I'm never coming back." Then he storms out, with the pizza still on the counter. Story 8. I worked at a bank. A woman came in furious because her card wasn't working. I asked if she had recently changed her PIN or had issues with overdrafts. She said no, then added, "It's probably because of Mercury in retrograde." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She demanded we tell the satellites to fix it. Then she asked to speak to our astrological technician. I said, "Ma'am, we don't have one of those." She screamed, "Well, maybe that's why everything's falling apart," and left without resolving anything. Story 9. I worked at a corporate office and once walked into the break room to find two coworkers in a full-on screaming match over how to pronounce gyro. It started as a joke. Then it escalated. One guy was shouting, "It's gyro," like a hero. The other guy shouted, "It's gyro!" like the sandwich. It got so intense that HR got involved. I wish I were kidding. Both got written warnings for aggressive food-based communication. They didn't talk for months after that. Story 10. I worked the overnight shift at a 24-hour gym. At around 2 a.m., this guy walks in wearing a full Spider-Man costume, mask and all. No one else was there, so I just figured, hey, whatever, maybe it's his thing. He starts working out hard, like really hard, sprinting on the treadmill, doing flips off the walls, climbing the pull-up bar like it's a building. Eventually, I asked him if he was okay. He said, "I'm training for something big." Didn't elaborate. After about 45 minutes, he saluted me and walked out without saying another word. Never saw him again. Still wonder if he ever saved the city. Story 11. I worked at a pet store, and one day this lady comes in and tries to return a goldfish. The fish was alive, swimming normally. I asked, "What's the issue with the fish?" She said, "It looks at me weird." I asked if she meant it startled her, or if it had done something unusual. She said, "No, it just gives me vibes." She demanded a refund because she said it had bad spiritual energy. We had a no-return policy on live animals, but the manager gave her store credit just to get her out. Story 12. I worked at a call center. A guy called in furious because his internet wasn't working. I walked him through a reset, checked the account, did all the usual stuff. Still nothing. Then I asked, "Can you describe what the modem lights are doing?" He said, "What modem?" Turns out the dude had unplugged his modem a week ago to make room for an air fryer and just assumed it still worked somehow. When I explained that it had to be plugged in, he said, "That's crab." I said, "Sir, the modem needs power." He replied, "I thought Wi-Fi was wireless," and hung up on me. Story 13. I worked security at a concert venue. At one show, we had a guy sneak in through a bathroom window. He wasn't trying to avoid paying for a ticket like he had one. He just wanted to try out some spy skills. He told us this while being detained. Said he was training to be an undercover operative. He was wearing a ski mask and had duct tape and a walkie-talkie in his backpack. When the police came, he told them he was testing their response time. They tested his cuffs instead. Story 14. I used to work at a fast food joint. One day, we had a rush of customers, and this guy ordered 6 burgers, 5 fries, and 4 milkshakes. The second I hand him the tray, he just dumps everything onto the floor and yells, "This isn't what I wanted." I said, "Sir, you ordered exactly that." He says, "No, I wanted it, but I don't want it." I stood there blinking. He left without another word. No refund, no explanation. Just pure chaos. Story 15. I worked as a cashier at a gas station. One night, a man came in, bought a banana, and paid entirely in pennies. That was fine. Annoying, but fine. Then he took the banana, walked outside, stood in front of the security camera, and slowly ate the entire thing, peel and all. Just stared into the camera the whole time. Didn't blink. Then he gave a thumbs up and walked away. Never came back. Story 16. I worked at a daycare. One of the toddlers kept telling us he had a ghost friend who lived in the bathroom. We chalked it up to imagination until other kids started saying they were scared to go in there too. Then one day during nap time, one of the staff saw the hand dryer turn on by itself. We went in, and no one was there. Maintenance checked it later and found a wiring issue causing it to go off randomly. But I still remember the little boy smiling and saying, "That's just my ghost helping you clean your hands." Story 17. I worked in a big box retail store. One time, a woman brought back a toaster she claimed was possessed. She said it kept burning only Jesus-shaped faces into the toast. We didn't believe her until she pulled out a Ziploc bag with burnt toast slices. And yeah, I don't know what to say. They did look like faces. One even looked like it had a crown. The manager gave her a refund immediately, no questions asked. I kept one of the toast photos. Still have no idea how she did it. Story 18. I worked maintenance at an office building. One day I got a work order that said ceiling is leaking brown liquid. That's bad. I got there and saw it dripping over someone's cubicle. We opened the ceiling and found the problem. A squirrel had somehow died above the tiles weeks ago. The heat had caused it to, well, liquefy. The brown liquid was decomposing squirrel. The guy who sat below it took one look and quit on the spot. Can't blame him. Story 19. I worked at a theme park and once had to escort a guy out who was dressed in full medieval knight armor. Sword, helmet, chainmail, everything. He wasn't part of any event. He just showed up like that. He told security he was there to slay the dragon in the gift shop. He meant the dragon plush toy. He actually tried to joust it using a mop handle. We banned him after that. He said we were destroying the kingdom. Okay, Lancelot. Story 20. I worked at a phone store. One day a man came in and asked for the newest iPhone. I showed it to him. He stared at it, then said, "Does it come in wood?" I thought I misheard. He repeated, I want the wooden one, with no screen. I asked if he meant a phone case. He said no, he wanted the Amish version of a smartphone. When I told him that didn't exist, he said, figures. This whole place is run by liars, and stormed out while mumbling about conspiracies. Story 21. I worked in a public library. One afternoon, a man came in wearing a tuxedo and asked if we had any books on romancing ghosts. I asked if he meant fiction or paranormal studies. He said, no, I'm in love with a ghost and want to do it right. He was completely serious. He checked out a book on Victorian courtship and one on seances. Then he winked and said, wish me luck. Her name is Margaret. Still the strangest interaction I've had at the reference desk. Story 22. I worked as a night janitor at a middle school. Around midnight, I heard a piano playing from the music room. I thought maybe a teacher stayed late. I went to check. No one was there. The piano stopped as soon as I opened the door. I looked at the security camera later. The piano key cover opened on its own. No people. No animals. Just keys slowly pressing down by themselves. I transferred buildings the next week. Not even gonna lie. Story 23. I worked at a Halloween store in mid-July. We opened early that year. A customer came in wearing a full clown outfit, shoes, makeup, everything. He bought 10 rubber chickens, 4 gallons of fake blood, and 1 pirate hat. Paid in cash. Said, this is for my court date. And walked out. I didn't ask questions. Story 24. I worked at a frozen yogurt place. A woman came in every day and asked if we had crabberry flavor. We told her every time, no, there's no such thing. She'd say, you'll have it one day. After a few weeks, she came in and slapped a Tupperware of mashed berries on the counter. Said, blend this with the vanilla. My manager actually let her do it. She smiled, took 1 bite, and said, told you. Then she never came back. Story 25. I worked in an office where one guy would whistle Twinkle Twinkle Little Star nonstop. Every single day, same tune, same rhythm, same volume. It drove everyone nuts. One day, someone replaced his keyboard with one that played a squeaky sound every time he typed. He didn't notice for a week. Said, I thought I was just typing faster. The rest of us almost lost it laughing. Story 26. I worked at a movie theater. A guy came in dressed like he was going to a wedding. Full tux, polished shoes, the works. He bought 1 ticket to Minions. Sat in the dead center. Didn't bring food, didn't check his phone, didn't react to anything. Just stared straight ahead like he was watching a thriller. After the credits rolled, he stood up, bowed to the screen, and walked out. Not a word spoken. We called him Mr. Gru from then on. Story 27. I used to work at a furniture store. One day, a woman tried to return a couch because her dog didn't like the aura. She said the couch had chaotic energy, and her pug refused to sit on it. When we told her we couldn't refund based on vibes, she got angry and said, your furniture is spiritually toxic. She left, but not before dramatically throwing a handful of sea salt around the showroom to cleanse it. No one touched that couch again. Story 28. I worked a night shift at a hospital. We had a patient who insisted that the ghosts in the hallway were stealing his socks. We thought he was just confused, until we actually did start finding random socks in places they shouldn't be. Like one stuck to the ceiling vent, another rolled up and hidden behind a painting. Security footage showed no one going in or out. Still have no explanation. We call it the sock poltergeist incident. Story 29. I worked at a car rental place. A guy came in to return a van and it reeked of onions. When we opened the back, it was full of loose onions. Hundreds, just rolling around. He said he used it to transport emotional baggage. We laughed awkwardly. Then he got serious and said, each onion represents a different time someone let me down. We had to charge him a cleaning fee. He said, I expected that. Pain always comes with a price. And left. Story 30. I worked at a music store and one day a guy came in asking for CDs that help plants grow. I asked if he meant ambient or classical music. He said, no. I need the specific ones that work on tomatoes. He claimed he was part of a plant whisperer guild. Ended up buying a whale song CD and one of Gregorian chants. Came back a week later and said they grew 4 inches. Didn't specify what grew. I didn't ask. Story 31. I used to work at a laundromat. A guy came in, dumped his clothes into the washer, and then threw in a whole frozen turkey. I stopped him like, sir, that's not how this works. He said, I'm multitasking. I told him we couldn't allow raw meat in the machines. He said, it's pre-cooked, just needs a rinse. I banned him immediately. 10 minutes later, he came back with a ham, like we wouldn't recognize him. Same hat, same confused energy. Story 32. I worked in IT support. A woman submitted a ticket saying her mouse only moves when she's angry. Thought she was joking, until I went to check. She moved the mouse fine while frustrated. But when she tried calmly, nothing. Turned out she was using a pressure-sensitive gaming mouse on a glass desk. Only when she slammed it hard enough did it register movement. She just muttered, "I knew emotions were the key." We still quote that. Story 33. I worked in an office where the coffee machine would play classical music if you hit the buttons in a certain sequence. Nobody knew why. It wasn't a smart machine. No speakers, just Beethoven. One day it stopped. Later we learned the intern had shoved a Bluetooth speaker inside the machine as a prank. We were actually sad when he got fired. The machine felt lonely after that. Story 34. I worked at a dog grooming place. This lady brought in her dog, shaved completely bald. She wanted us to give it a perm. We explained that perms require hair. She said, use extensions. We said that's not how it works. She got angry and yelled, "You're suppressing his personality." Then left us a 1-star review that just said, hair fascists. Story 35. I worked at a deli. This guy ordered 17 slices of turkey, not a pound. Exactly 17 slices. I asked if he meant a half pound or something. He said, no. 17. Not more, not less. When I gave him 17 slices, he counted them one by one, then smiled and said, the prophecy continues. Paid in nickels. Story 51. I worked at a call center. One customer kept asking if we could pause reality while she fixed her problems, and she said, I just need a moment to breathe without the world spinning. We didn't have a script for that. She ended up crying on the line. We stayed silent for a minute, then offered her resources. She thanked us and said it was the nicest call she ever had. Story 52. I worked at a pet store. A man came in buying goldfish but kept asking for the ones with attitude. We thought he was joking. He left with 3 fish and a mirror for their tank. He said, they need to see who they really are. Checked back a week later. Fish seemed fine, but definitely staring at themselves a lot. Story 53. I worked at a fast food joint. One guy ordered 100 fries, but wanted each one strategically placed by size. He spent 20 minutes sorting and lining them up on the tray like soldiers. He said, fries need respect. After eating, he left a $20 tip and said, for the art. We still talk about the fries general. Story 54. I worked at a library. A kid checked out a book and then asked if he could borrow the silence. We weren't sure what he meant until he explained he needed quiet for a project about thoughts. We gave him the quietest corner. He came back a month later smiling, said, the silence was perfect. Story 55. I worked at a convenience store. A man bought exactly 3 chewing gums every day for a month. He refused to tell us why. One day he left a note, 3 gums for 3 wishes. Don't ask. Never saw him again. Story 56. I worked in a movie theater. A woman came in with a box of tissues and sat in the front row. After the movie, she applauded loudly and said, that was therapy. She bought a ticket every day for a week for the same movie. We asked why. She said, it helps me heal. We let her have her space. Story 57. I worked at a hotel. A guest requested a room with no corners. We thought it was a prank. Turns out she was afraid of sharp angles in geometry. We gave her the roundest room we had. She was very grateful. Story 58. I worked at a flower delivery company. One guy sent bouquets labeled, sorry I'm a mess, to random addresses. Recipients called confused but happy. He told us it was his way of throwing kindness like confetti. Most creative apology ever. Story 59. I worked at a gym. A man wore a full tuxedo and said he was training for a black tie marathon. He only jogged in place and drank water. Everyone was confused until he won a costume contest later. He took it very seriously. Story 60. I worked at a thrift store. A woman bought a single shoe and asked if we could find its pair, and she said, my other shoe went missing in life. We never found the match, but kept the shoe aside for her. She came back months later, smiling, and said, it's enough. Story 61. I worked at a car wash. A man brought in a bumper car and insisted on a full exterior wash. We did it. He paid in quarters and said, now it's ready for the arcade. We never saw him again. Story 62. I worked at a bakery. A girl ordered a cake with no sugar, no flour, just vibes. We weren't sure what that meant, but tried our best. We gave her an empty box with a smile. She said, perfect. Story 63. I worked at a coffee shop. A man asked for a cup of liquid optimism. We gave him the strongest espresso. He smiled. Close enough. Story 64. I worked at a laundromat. One customer brought clothes but separated them by color and emotional energy. Red clothes were anger, blues were calm, whites were hope. She said it helps her cleanse her feelings. Story 65. I worked at a toy store. A kid returned a toy robot and said it had too many secrets. We couldn't tell if he was joking. He said, I want my toys to tell me everything. Story 66. I worked at a pizza delivery service. A man tipped with old coins and said, for good luck in history. We kept them in a jar. Story 67. I worked at a music store, and a woman asked if we had a playlist for when the world ends. We made one up on the spot. She thanked us and left quietly. Story 68. I worked at a park. A man walked around wearing a sign that said, "Looking for a smile." When people smiled, he wrote down their names. No one ever asked why. Story 69. I worked at a gym. A woman lifted weights, but only in silence, refusing to speak. She said, "Words waste energy." Story 70. I worked at a fast food place. A kid ordered a burger but asked for all the sauces inside it. When it arrived, he said, "This is chaos and I love it."